wpget web dev tutorials for all user levels. Okay, so I just wanted to ponder through my findings on creating a custom Elementor widget, which has default wireframe styling. Just an idea I was working on. Came across a few hurdles where the documentation from Elementor were incorrect, which made it a little bit hard. So talking to a few people, searching through other vendors' code, finally found some solutions, and I just wanted to post this in the hope that it helps someone else wanting to do something similar. So what you can see on the screen at the moment is a very basic widget I've created, which I've called a tooltip. Sorry, not a tooltip, a tip bar widget, where we've got a label and a content. So in the label, we can change all the details there, all the styling we can change there. For the label, the icon, and the content, you can style all that up. Now, what makes this a little bit different to some of the other stuff I've seen is that also under the page settings, I've added a section here where we can turn wireframe styles on or off. I'll show you how that works. So I'm firstly just going to grab my basic widget that I've created, drag it across here, and you can see by default it has this wireframe styling where I've got a transparent green background with a green dotted or green dashed border around. So if I go into my page settings and switch off the wireframe styles, the styles all disappear. So the idea is that you can create a bunch of widgets in here, you can paste them in here, whatever they are. This is only the first of probably many that I'll create. And you can just look at it as a layout and say, okay, this is where it's going to sit. Even with it in the styling here, you can still go in there and say, I want the tooltip here, I want that to be a little bit further down, or I want it to be not full width, I want it to be inline, maybe a line at the middle, maybe a line to the right, put some background color on it if you want to. Set the, sorry, that was the total color. Actually, let's do that, and we'll make the background maybe a dark gray. We've got a dark gray, make a mid gray. Set my icon to different icon. Maybe it's a stamp. Give it some color and give it some right margin. Push it away from that. That's basic styling. Now you can still see, it might be a bit hard here. I'm just going to try to zoom in a little bit here. And too much maybe. You can still see I've got this green dotted border around the outside. And the reason for that is because I've still got my styling for the wireframes enabled. If I switch off my wireframe styling, now it's all gone. I've only got the styles that I just applied. So what I'd have done with this, if you have a look at these others, I've just worked through and just made a few dummy versions of this, which you can obviously duplicate. Oops. Drag and drop. Gotta love Elementor's drag and drop sometimes. Gotta love demos. So we'll just drag this down into the next column. Oh boy. There we go. So yeah, so it's a nice way of just styling up things really quickly, where you're not sure what the look's going to be. Just turn your wireframe styles on or off. Actually, I'm going to get rid of that. That's a setting, an old setting. So wireframe styles here, turn them on, and these are all wireframe styles. So that's the idea. Now, most of this is pretty well documented in Elementor and pretty straightforward, and some of it is not. And some of their documentation is incorrect. I've had to go through and work through other vendors' code to find out how they added things, how they made it work, to figure out how that would work. So I'm just going to very quickly, if I can, I promise to try and be quick, work through the plugin that I've created which does this. So I've called it wpgetWidgets, and the plugin file's typical where you've got your WordPress header. I give it a namespace so I can use these named imports. Typical, if it's not loaded by WordPress, then exit so you can't access directly. define a few global variables here, or constants, I should say. Now I use Composer on all my projects, and I use the auto load. To do that, all you have to do is have the proper PSR4 structure. So for example, I've got structure here with source. My wpget underscore Elementor underscore widgets is my root class. And then, so if I look at this Elementor helper here, the path is wpget Elementor widgets, helper, Elementor helper. So the path is the same as the folder path. Then the PSR4 auto loading will work. So in Composer, basically I say if the class starts with this, then find that under source, wpget Elementor widgets. And then if the rest of the path is PSR4 compliant, you don't have to then include or require those files. This autoloader will automatically do it when you reference a class that hasn't been loaded. So that's my standard operating procedure for that. So load the autoloader, and then notice here I'm calling my application instance, which is a singleton, which we'll talk about, and I haven't had to include that file. So here's the file here, but I haven't had to require or include that file because the autoloader does that for me. If we have a look at the instance here, it's a singleton pattern, so we're only going to get one instance of this class. I used to use static methods. This is a much better way to do it for testing, because you can actually then, say for example, have a config file where you can have different applications, different components that load for testing. Whereas when they're static, it's a bit hard to do. So this is a better way of operating, I think. Now, so basically all I'm doing with this, I'll just zoom in on that a little bit, is the call the instance, where if there's no existing instance of this, then create a new instance. If there is already an instance, just return it. So it's only going to instantiate once. So it's calling this constructor once only. So we then have an Elementor hook, which is to do with the editor. So this here will fire after the editor's include its own scripts. So we're then going to enqueue our scripts and styles for the editor. We then got a standard WordPress WP-enqueue scripts, which is for the front end display, and we're going to enqueue our scripts which are for the front end display there. And then we've got another Elementor hook here, which is just to register a new category. So I'm just calling registered categories here. Now we'll come back to this point here. So when we're registering the categories, I just got a category name called wpget, title is wpget. This icon doesn't get used anymore with the new UI. And I'll have a look here, and if I go to my elements, I will see I've got a new category called wpget. That's what this bit here does. So it just adds that category. In the editor, when I enqueue after enqueuing the scripts for the editor, it just is going to then enqueue my editor CSS scripts, which is here. And all that's doing is adding the my icon. I've just got that as a base64 encoded SVG, and that's on the after selector for my icon, widget icon. And on the before selector, I'm using a font icon, which I've created using Icomoon. And where we end up with that is there's the icon that's been created with Icomoon as a font icon. There's my little logo there, which is the base64 encoded SVG. So that's pretty much how that works. All right, so we also, on the front end, we enqueue our UI default CSS, which is what I've created. And I'm going to go through this, how that works a little bit later. And here's my defaults, where I just set some root variables. I've got some utility classes I've created for my stuff, some flex stuff here to fit the content, min, width, full, and alignment, flex alignment stuff. And if it's a label wrapper with an icon, set the display to flex so that it lines up properly. So I'll show that a little bit later. Then I've got my actual widget CSS, where here's my toolbar basic, which is the first, tooltip. I've actually used the wrong word here. It's not really a tooltip, it's a tipbar. So it's just the basic settings for that. I've got a label on it, which I'm doing some basic settings for that using variables. Content, again, basic settings for that. And then down here is where the interesting part starts. So use WPG use wireframe styles, prefixing these same classes. So if this class is added before that class, then it's going to use my wireframe styles. So in my code, I'm actually adding this to the body when it's enabled. So then if the wireframe is enabled, it's going to apply these classes because they're more specific than these ones. So that's pretty much how that works. Pretty straightforward so far. All right, now coming back into here. So that's the application. Now I've then got to load my modules. Now I've chosen to use a module loader pattern, and what I'll do later in the game here is I'll check and make sure that Elementor is installed and whatever other dependencies I might have it is loaded, I should say. And if it isn't loaded, then I'll put an admin notice up rather than loading the actual modules, because the modules are going to fail and cause errors if the Elementor hasn't been loaded. So that check will be added a little bit later. This is just to get it up and running so I can check it. So going to my module loader, and again, I don't have to include these because of my PSR for autoloader with Composer. So go to the instance for that. Again, same pattern to give me a singleton instance. In my constructor, all I'm doing is calling load modules. Now, with this, all I'm doing is scanning the directory. Back here, I've given it a constant to tell it where my modules are. So that's under source, wpget Elementor Widgets, modules. That just tells me where that is. In there, I'm scanning that directory. If it's got the dot or the dot dot, just continue. Doing a for each on what it finds, and just continue on a dot or a dot dot because it just includes those with the scan dir, which we don't want. And then in here, it will create a class with a namespace. The namespace here is wpget Elementor Widgets. Now this module loader is straight under our source, straight under our root folder here, which is why it's got the root namespace here. So I can get the namespace, which will be wpget Elementor Widgets, modules, then the directory that it finds. So in this case, it'll be page settings general or tipbar. And then module controller is the name of the class. So if I look in that folder, there's my module controller class. And all I'm doing is instantiating that, and that will run. Now, what I would do if I was going to expand on this and have it like you'd have with plugins like Crockablock and Dynamicu and whatnot, because it gets so many modules, it can start to affect the performance of the site and particularly the editor. So you can enable or disable modules. So what I'll do later on is I'll have a settings section in WordPress, and I will only load these modules if they're enabled. But to do it in a very simple, I'm just going to show you an example. If I went enabled, pasted enabled modules, equals, and I'll just do array. Now we want to make sure that page settings general is always enabled. Oops. Paste that in there. And tip bar. And then what we could do is in this here, we can actually change that to add an or not in array. If the directory name is not in array of enabled. Okay, so what we're saying here is if this directory name, so either page settings general or tip bar, is not in the array enabled modules, then just continue. So do not bother to load this. So I could do that if I wanted to, or I can make it more fancy and either have this in a config file, or I can have a interface in WordPress where I can enable disable modules. But that's a simple example of how you would control which enabled modules actually load. Get rid of that for now. So that's the simplicity of it. So what we're doing is saying if it's enabled, then load it. Okay. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the tipbar widget, because the page settings one is where I ran into some trouble, which I had to work out. So the tipbar widget gets the module controller and instantiates it. So that's the tipbar module controller. Again, singleton. All we're doing is when Elementor fires a hook for widgets registered, we're going to call register widgets on this class, which basically is going to get a new basic tipbar widget. So in here, basic tipbar widget, and then we're going to add this to Elementor through their widgets manager. So this is all documented quite well at Elementor in their documents. This is not a problem at all. So that's all I've done to add that widget. The rest of it, all of this widget code, is all reasonably well documented if you follow some of the basic widgets. So I'm not going to go into all of this except for the get categories. Remember, originally we created the category there. So I think that was on my application. We did. So in my application, I registered a category called wpget, which is called wpget, and that shows up in here. So that's my category there. So in my module controller here, it is, where are we? Tipbar widget, sorry. I'm telling it I want to add that to that category. So that'll appear in the right location in the editor. Apart from that, we've got a widget icon tip basic. Okay, so we're returning the icon, which is in my editor CSS. There it is there. And before, we're adding my icon moon font, the content, and just setting the font weight. And that gives us this font here just above where it says basic tipbar. So that's pretty straightforward. Now all of these controls are pretty straightforward and well documented at Elementor, so I have no problem with that on how that works. You then get down to this part here. We got a render method. Now the render method is PHP. It is the front end rendering. Also, when you're editing one of these, so if I'm on that and I'm editing it, it's using the JavaScript renderer. When I click away from it, it uses the PHP renderer. So they need to render the same stuff. So this here is what will happen in the front end or when I'm not editing. So this is all pretty straightforward again. There's a couple of things in here that I'll talk about. Just find where they are. So the classes here, I've done this as a wrapper main, a label wrapper, and a content. I probably should have called that content wrapper. I might actually do that now. Consistency. Okay, so I've just renamed that as content wrapper, and I've just put an array in there. And with my settings, I'm just using this @ symbol in front of that. Now, what that does is that tells it if it doesn't exist, don't throw an error. So it's either if this label width is set to yes, the wrapper label, we're going to add this class the label width set to yes, we're going to add wpgetWidgets min full, okay, which we found in here as a utility. So we're saying the width is 100%. Okay, so if this doesn't exist, which it should exist, or it's not set to yes, it then adds the wpg fit content instead. So it's going to use this wpg fit content, which sets the width to fit content. Okay, so moving on from that, this is all just same deal with alignment. We then add some render attributes using these wrappers that we've created here with the additional classes added depending on what the settings are. Then add some inline editing attributes so we can edit the label. So for example, if I click on this label, I can edit it there. If I click on the message, I can edit it there. If you don't add these, you can't edit it there. You can only edit it. Oops. If I clicked on here, for example, I can edit it on the content here, but I can't click on any of these and edit them in the actual window. So that's what these do. They add the editing attributes. This is the actual attributes going to be added to as classes. And the rest of it, again, is well documented. Then you've got the content template where the output here, so this structure here needs to be pretty much the same as this structure here for it to look correct. But because we're using a JavaScript template up here, so it's got to load at the right time. If we just put pure JavaScript in there, this view has not been instantiated yet. So the templating system injects this at the right time. It then injects the right attributes into here. Again, well documented at Elementor, so I'm not going to go through exactly how all of this works. All I'm going to say is this structure here should be the same as that structure here. The only difference is the way you render attributes on these divs. So, and that's whether you're using PHP or JavaScript. Okay, so that's as far as I'm going to talk about with the widget. Now, the tricky bit that I got to is these page settings. So if I go to the module controller, I'll come back to this here, for example. So I've got 3 tip messages that I've just added to the DOM. I've done a bit of styling on the first one. The other 2 I haven't done any styling on at all. So what I've done is in the page settings, wpget settings, I've got to use wireframe switch. If I turn that off, all of the wireframe styles disappear. Turn it on, the wireframe styles come back. Now, how I'm doing that is if we look at the body here, see we've got a class here which is WPG use wireframe styles. If I turn that off, that class disappears. If I turn it on, that class comes back. And that's just on the body tag. So if we look at the CSS for this, what I'm doing is when this class is prefixed with use wireframe styles, use the wireframe styles. That's for these 2. So we've got our standard settings, which is basically the spacing settings and padding and position and all that sort of stuff that we have as a standard setting. And then we've got some wireframe styles that we want to apply when this switch is set to yes. So that's pretty much how that works. Now, what I found a bit difficult with this is, first of all, getting the settings into the page settings. The Elementor documentation is completely wrong. And I ended up having to go through other people's or other vendors' code to figure out what they did to get it working. And I found the solutions there. So thank God for that. So let's look at this here. So we've got a couple of things here. So first of all, I'll just come back to this page setting instance here. So we've got a standard WordPress body class filter. What that does is it gets the current page ID, it gets the document, which is the Elementor document for that page ID. And if that document has the setting WPG use wireframes, so that was when we switched the switch on, then if the state, that's the state, sorry, and if the state equals yes, then add this to the body classes. So that's what switches off this class here, on or off, using the WordPress filters for that, body class filters. The other one is this standard front end enqueue scripts, where we're getting if we're in edit mode, we need to enqueue some JavaScript. Now, I'll explain that now. This is where another thing where I've got a little bit stuck. So without that JavaScript, when I flick the switch, nothing happens in the editor, because even though the setting changed, it doesn't save the changes. So I have to if I don't have that JavaScript, I have to change the setting, update the page, and then refresh, and then it'll load the changes into the editor. So with the controls for the widgets, you can access where are we? Tip bar. So the controls for the widgets call this JavaScript content template, which then renders the JavaScript. For these controls that are outside of that, it doesn't call that. So we need to look at another way of updating the DOM. So what I've done in here is, where too many things open here, page settings controller. So what I'm doing is I'm checking to see if we're in edit mode, and I stole this idea from what's it called, Elementor add-ons. Basically, it looks for the request parameter of elemental preview and returns true if it's there, or returns false. So if you're in the editor, this request parameter will be there. So we then go back to here. So if it is in the editor, we want to load this here. And the reason I've done that is because that JavaScript, if we load that outside of the editor, it throws an error. Now I'll explain that shortly. So here's the JavaScript for it. Very simple. So what we're doing is, typically I always stick things in a closure so that we don't have any name clashes. So I can just call this a simple name like handle change, and that's not going to clash with that name anywhere else because it's inside this closure. We then want to listen for the JavaScript event Elementor frontend init. Now this is what I got from looking through other people's code. The code on the developer documentation is completely different and completely wrong. So that doesn't work for me. Now, and also, sorry, even for just adding the page settings, it was completely wrong. So at this point, when this hook fires, the Elementor object is available. And it's initialized. It has a settings object, a page object, which is a property, I should say. Now, page property has an add change callback, so we can listen for this use wireframe styles. So if we go back to, where are we? Page settings. Page settings. We have a control called wpg use wireframe styles. So over here, it listens for a change on that, and it calls the handle change, which actually passes in the value, the new value. So all I'm doing here is I'm using jQuery. You can use vanilla JavaScript if you like. jQuery is available at this point, so as far as I'm concerned, if it's there, why not use it? So all I'm doing is that if the new value is yes, then add the body class, which is this use wpg use wireframe styles. If it's not set to yes, then remove the class. So that is what is allowing me in the editor switch it on and off here and have that show in the editor. So that's pretty much how I got around what I needed. I think this is a really cool way of doing it, because what we can do here is if we don't have an idea what we want, let's say I'll just get rid of that column. Okay, I'll just add another column. Get rid of this here. Okay, I've already styled that. So these here are just raw widgets. So we might look at this and go, okay, I want that widget to look kind of like, I don't want it to be full width, I just want to be inline, and I want to stick it maybe over on the right, and I want to have that down about there. I want to change the icon to maybe a question. There we go, and I'll put some padding on that. Perhaps some lorem ipsum text. Let's grab a single paragraph. Okay, chuck it in here. And there we've got one example of what that might look like. And we can just duplicate that out. maybe duplicate the entire row section. So we've got 2 sections here. Okay, so we're just wireframing this out as to what that might look like. So we've got lots of widgets like this. They all have the same kind of look, and all we're looking at is how does that lay out. Now, if I then go in and I want to edit these, I would probably go then and go to my page settings, and I would switch off my wireframe. So I've got none of the wireframe settings there. Go to one of these, style it up. So maybe we're going to have the label style of having a, or maybe a background color. Where are we? Background of, I don't know, black. A title color, we'll make it light gray. We'll give it a bit of a border. So set that to solid and 0. So I can put border radius on it. Okay. I might then sort of set the padding to maybe 5 pixels, so it's nice and small. Put a box shadow, or just a small box shadow on there of say 5. Get my label, change the color of that to accent color, give it a bit more right margin. Now my content style, I might go in there and make the background on that, we'll make it white, with the content color being our text color, and let's give it some box shadow of maybe 20, a little bit of vertical offset, and drop that down. Okay, so now I've got, let's say I've got a tip here that I like the look of. Then all I have to do is right click on this, copy, right click on that, paste the style, paste the style, paste the style. Now I've got some styled tip boxes. So it's a really cool way of just doing an overall view of how's this going to look. You're not really sure what the colors or the style is going to look like. When you're done, you just go through, turn off your tip, turn off your wireframe styles, and then just style it all up how you actually want it. So that's pretty much it. I hope somebody gets some value out of that, and it's been fun working this out. I don't think I'll be wanting to put out a plugin with lots of widgets on. This is really for my own use. My issue with putting it out is that when you do that, you then have to support it, and it's just not something that I'll probably have the time to do. So this is really just to help people understand it. What I will do is once I've added a few more widgets, I'll make it available as a free download that people can use if they want to. Just understanding that it is not a supported thing that I'm not going to keep providing support for, but you're welcome to use whatever I come up with. So I will release that when I've added a few more of these widgets to it that use the same principles. But hopefully that's good value, and it helps somebody at least.